What's up, guys? Today's video is going to be very interesting because it will be one of the famous refutations against Smith-Morra. It appeared back to 1983, and I remember when I started to play chess, I was like 12. There was a guy in the chess club who was a big chess fan, and he was an older guy, liked to, collect these interesting articles, games, miniatures, and stuff. And he said, "Have you ever heard of the Siberian trap?" I said, "No. What's that?" "Have you ever heard of Smith-Morra or Matulovic Gambit?" I said, "Yes, that's a very interesting one for white. Let me show you this one, and you'll see one of the refutations of the Gambit." So get ready for a very interesting lecture here, and it's going to be a very short one. E4, C5, and the famous Smith-Morra with D4. C takes D4, C3, D takes C3, Knight takes C3. And as you know here, white sacrifices a pawn for very good and perspective, pretty good development and a pretty good initiative afterwards in the center. Here, black has so many options and possibilities. You know that in one of the videos here on the channel I gave you Knight C6, D6, and A6, which is considered to be one of the most interesting lines against Smith-Morra. But here I opted for Knight C6 and to show you this famous Siberian trap. After Knight C6, Knight F3, black goes for E6. It's good against Smith-Morra because Smith-Morra players usually like to place their bishop on C4, queen on E2, and their rook, they make, of course, a short castle, and then they go with rook to D1. In order to fight against that, we just need to see what are we supposed to do against this variation. So after E6, it's a pretty good one, and it's a pretty good reaction because now they have to play bishop C4, and even though the bishop on C4 kind of hits the wall since it attacks the pawn on E6 and F7, it's a good and a pretty logical move for Smith-Morra guys. And after queen C7, for the first time, we can see some very interesting threats here. First of all, queen on C7 makes some kind of a shallow pressure against the bishop on C4, but at the same time, just goes after the H2 square. I know you're probably wondering, what is this guy talking about? Like, how is this making pressure? Because when they play castles, you just go Knight F6. And believe it or not, we're not too far away from ending this lecture and miniature. Knight F6 with the idea, of course, developing this knight and going with the knight straight to G4. It's a very interesting thing that here I found more than 400 games being played like this with the queen on E2. And already white, who's just following like the main footsteps of the Smith-Morra, could find itself in some sort of trouble. Why? Because when you play queen E2, here black just goes with the knight G4. Boom. Such a nice trick and such an important idea. Maybe most of you cannot even imagine what is about to happen, but I'll show you. I won't show you the threat after knight G4, but you can see it. First of all, I just want to tell you that I found more than, just like I previously told you, 400 games. And let me just show you what happens here. More than 200 games, white played the best move at knight B5. But I'm going to show you this one after I show you how the game in Siberia ended between two juniors. So white went for the most logical H3, like what is your knight doing there? And all of a sudden, boom, knight D4. It's a great idea of deflection, and it's a funny thing that even Jan Elvest, a famous grandmaster from Estonia, missed this one, and he just put his knight after H3 on E5. Knight D4 wins the game on the spot. The point is, if they take the knight, you just deliver checkmate on h2. If they take the knight, you just take the queen. And after they take like this, you just have to play a6 and you're completely winning. They don't have enough compensation, like 2 pieces for the queen. And here, even though I found more than 60 games being played like this after h3, and hopefully you're gonna win your games like this, I just briefly have to show you what happened in like 100 games like this. Rook to d1 is a very suspicious move, because when they play bishop c5, you still tempo, you threaten on e3, they gotta play bishop e3. In that case, you're gonna take by knight, you'll win the bishop pair, they will have like double pawns in the center, and they're going to be terrible in this type of position. Just play a6 and you're untouchable. Then I found more than 150 games with g3. I even remember one game of mine being played like this. You just develop your bishop on c5, and when they play bishop f4, d6, and no matter what happens, knight b5 or whatever, you just install your knight on e5, you're up a pawn, you're just going to kick away this knight from the center, and you're untouchable. And finally, found more than 200 games with a knight b5, which stops knight d4 for the time being. You go queen b8, you're still threatening a6 followed by knight e4, and when they play h3, absolutely the best way to remain with all your threats is h5. They can't touch it, because in that case you would just take, open up h-file, queen would come on h2, you threaten the knight, you threaten a6 followed by knight e4 with lots of nice tactical threats and tricks there. So hopefully you like the Siberian trap against Smith Morra. If more than 60 guys went for h3 here and blundered this, even I won, I believe, 2 or 3 blitz games like this, then I don't see a reason why you shouldn't repeat this and win your games as well. Hopefully you enjoyed this lecture, and see you next Friday. Bye bye.